The guy that's got everybody saying, L.A. Knight. Yeah. L.A. Knight, it's not, Paul Heyman doesn't do anything accidentally. And on SmackDown this week, we saw a confrontation with Paul Heyman and L.A. Knight. Now, last week, you got to pay attention to every detail with this Paul Heyman. He loves telling stories this way these days. He loves making movies. Paul Heyman has gotten to this level where he loves, I think, what he considers elevated storytelling. And last week, during a promo, it was either last week or the week before. It was last week. During a promo with Kaylor, to whatever it was, he just randomly threw in that L.A. Knight sucked. He's a flash in the pan. L.A. Knight. And he moved on. But it's like, why was Paul Heyman mocking L.A. Knight? Like, there's so many people on the roster that have nothing to do with the bloodline. Why is Paul Heyman mocking L.A. Knight? And then this week on SmackDown, he goes, oh, I'm a fan, Mr. Knight. Let me introduce myself. And it was great. It was a great segment because at first I'm going, oh, this could be interesting because seeds that are being planted here are, imagine a world where L.A. Knight turns heel once again and is managed by Paul Heyman. Imagine Paul doing for L.A. Knight what he did for Roman Reigns, what he did for CM Punk, what he did for Brock Lesnar, right? This isn't like a Cesaro or Michael McGillicuddy or one of those scenarios. This is like, yeah, L.A. Knight truly is evil, and you know this because Paul Heyman is in his corner. But I think we're pretty far away from that. And I don't think that's happening, especially because just as I was thinking, imagine the possibilities, he goes a step further, and he gets right in L.A. Knight's face. And he goes, let me give you a little piece of advice. When I am talking, you do not interrupt me. Like really talking down to L.A. Knight and really building some tension with L.A. Knight. And I don't think that that's done accidentally. I think they were planting seeds again. Am I telling you that Fastlane, it's going to be L.A. Knight versus Solo Sikoa? Absolutely not. Because we're not there yet. I still go by my original plan of putting L.A. Knight and John Cena on a tag team together at some point. But I do think that L.A. Knight will get put into the Bloodline story. Because I think a lot of what's going on with L.A. Knight right now is they're testing the water to how far fans will go. I think that historically in WWE, they've been afraid to pull the trigger on certain acts because fans can be fickle, right? And just because they're going crazy for you this week doesn't mean that a month from now, they're still going to go crazy. There are plenty of examples of people going crazy for a superstar, and then when the WWE gets behind them, people cool on them. And that's not necessarily the fans' fault. You know, that might be because the storyline didn't work anymore. They ruined it. That's happened before. Or it might be because the fans don't feel that it's organic anymore. So I think that and again, this is this new regime. This is this new way of WWE doing things, which is similar to maybe how they used to do it way back in the day. And it worked. And it worked then, and it works now. I think putting LA Knight against standard heels. You have some standard heels in WWE. They follow a heel formula. They're going to get booed in every building that they go in. They can lose all the time. It doesn't matter. The Miz is the king. Austin Theory is next. And Grayson Waller is following in those footsteps. So that's why you see LA Knight paired up with The Miz. Because The Miz is excellent. And because he is the quintessential bad guy for LA Knight to face. Who's he facing on SmackDown? Austin Theory. Who's he cutting promos on? Grayson Waller. It's like this way we can see if we can grow LA Knight and it still feels natural. I think that LA Knight will be inserted into this Bloodline story slowly because it'd be interesting to see if LA Knight gets to a level where he could be an opponent for Roman Reigns. And I think that putting him in the War Games match just makes the most sense in the world, especially if Roman isn't in there. You have LA Knight now not paired off with your standard villains. You have LA Knight paired off against your top villains. You have LA Knight in there with Finn Balor, with Dominic Mysterio, with Damian Priest, with Jimmy Uso, with Solo Sikoa. Now, does he keep that baby face-ishness, right? Cody Rhodes, Sami Zayn, Kevin Owens, those are top good guys. Those are guys that are just top of their game. Nobody can shake them. They know what to do in every scenario, and they keep the crowd with them. Jey Uso is right up there. He hasn't had a lot of experience as a solo top babyface act. The other three are playing on this level right now, the likes of which we haven't seen in a very long time. So if we're now pairing LA Knight with them and putting him with top villains, now it's like, okay, what do we really have with this LA Knight? And if he succeeds there, which he very well might, and there's no reason to think he won't, then it's time to say, okay, do we want to try this? Maybe at the Royal Rumble, instead of having LA Knight win the Rumble, which some people would love to see, do we want to go to the Royal Rumble with LA Knight versus Roman Reigns? Right? He's got to face somebody at that pay-per-view. Well, I guess he doesn't have to. Do we want to do it? Well, he crushed it at War Games. Let's do it. So that's why I think adding LA Knight as the fifth member of this babyface team at War Games only makes sense. And yeah, I love the interaction with Paul Heyman on SmackDown. I thought, first of all, Paul Heyman using Siri is like the greatest layer on that cell phone gimmick since he started using that cell phone. You know, Paul Heyman, late 80s, going into the early 90s, he was as known, his brick phone became as famous as he was. He didn't go anywhere without that phone. Now the idea that, you know, we've upgraded. We're in 2023, everybody's got a phone. But Paul Heyman is putting it to his mouth and telling it to call Roman Reigns. It's like, of course Paul Heyman is the guy who uses voice commands to make his phone calls. It's so annoying. But of course he's that guy in a public place. I love that. And I also shout out to LA Knight for saying, well, if I was a complete idiot, I'd say the adjective there is play. I'm like, oh, okay. He finally got that receipt on Kevin Nash. I'm the biggest Kevin Nash fan in the world. 1995, this young man was running on diesel power. 1996, 1997, Big Sexy was my favorite member of the NWO by far. Now, Kevin Nash is right up there with the top podcasters in all the world. I wasn't a big fan of the CM Punk run, Kevin Nash. That version of Kevin Nash wasn't my guy. But when he returned at the Royal Rumble as Diesel, oh my God, I was in heaven. But I do love when somebody gets a little receipt ski. One day I want to interview LA Knight, sit him down here in the NotSam studio, because one of the things that I find fascinating about LA Knight is he listens to what everybody says about him, and he doesn't forget a thing. I have listened to so many LA Knight interviews where he's like, no, I know what you said. I remember sitting at Wrestlemania weekend and sitting in on Busted Open and hosting the show with them. And LA Knight remembered exactly what Mark Henry had said about him. He knew. He hears it all. I kind of love that. It's a level of pettiness, but I think it's a healthy pettiness. And I think it actually works with his gimmick, too. It just adds to that chip on his shoulder.